Hi, I'm Trevor Ault. Today on ABC News Live, the race to the Georgia runoff. Less than 24 hours until final votes begin in the high-stakes Senate runoff. Incumbent Raphael Warnock and former football star Herschel Walker pulling out all the stops were in Atlanta and Washington, D.C. Plus, the new warning from the CDC about a so-called triple-demic as hospitals nationwide are filling up with flu, COVID, and RSV patients. Dr. John Brownstein is here live with what you need to know. And soccer stars Walker Zimmerman and Kellen Acosta are here in our studio with us, fresh off the U.S. men's exciting World Cup run. Like Team USA says, the future is looking brighter than ever. But we begin with that race to the runoff. Early turnout in Georgia's Senate runoff between Democrat Raphael Warnock and Republican Herschel Walker. It's been breaking daily voting records repeatedly. In fact, it's done it 3 times since the polls opened last Monday. If Senator Warnock defeats Walker, the Democrats will have 51 seats, an outright majority. Our congressional correspondent Rachel Scott is in Atlanta with the latest.
With just 24 hours to go, the final scramble to turn out every last vote.
We got to get out there and let them know we're sick and tired of this.
Former football star Herschel Walker taking on Democratic incumbent Senator Raphael Warnock in a contentious and critical race.
Elections are about a choice, and this election is about competence and character.
Warnock held a slight edge on Walker in the November election, but did not get more than 50% of the vote, triggering a runoff by state law. And voters are turning out like never before, smashing single-day records. 1.8 million ballots already cast, lines stretching to the parking lot. In the closing days, Walker has shied away from taking questions, his campaign clouded by controversy. Still, Republicans are determined to show a united front. Governor Brian Kemp easily won re-election. He was never seen with Walker on the campaign trail until now.
I'm backing Herschel, and I hope you'll join me in voting for him, too.
And Warnock turning to former President Barack Obama once again to rally Democrats. But noticeably absent, President Biden, who has stayed away from Georgia altogether.
We have to win this election.
Democrats do have control of the Senate, but a win for them would allow them to expand their slight majority, which would make things like confirming judges, negotiating within their own party, even legislating a whole lot easier. A win for Republicans gives them clear momentum heading into 2024. Trevor.
Rachel Scott for us. Rachel, thank you. And there is a whole lot to talk about in the world of politics. So we want to bring in ABC's Jay O'Brien from Capitol Hill for more on Georgia and much more. But Jay, let's start with Georgia. What exactly is at stake here beyond just 51 seats in the Senate here? What's the difference?
Well, Trevor, you heard Rachel say it just there. It would make judicial nominees, among other things, a little bit easier. But it also gives Democrats a wider majority. 51 seats means that they don't need to have every single Democratic senator vote for something. They can afford to lose one. And over the last few years, Americans have really learned the names of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema because they have been Democratic holdout votes. And a 51-seat majority means that Democrats could afford to lose one of those senators to pass legislation. Of course, any legislation that comes out of a Democrat-controlled Senate would certainly run up against a Republican-controlled House come January, but it does give Senate Democratic leadership, Chuck Schumer, for example, some much-needed breathing room.
I mean, there were some discussions that Manchin had enough power. He was basically the real president for the past 2 years. Jay, I know that we got to get the government funded. There's the clock ticking. They have to get funding secured by next Friday. How are those discussions going?
Well, December 16th, as you said, is that key date. There has to be some kind of an agreement by December 16th to keep the government funded. There are negotiations ongoing here on Capitol Hill between both parties, but I can tell you the concern is that those talks may have stalled or they may have reached a sticking point. An update from that room is still unclear. But the last-ditch effort, the last plan that lawmakers have said is that if they can't come to a broader funding agreement, they'll do what's called a continuing resolution or a CR that would keep the government funded for a year. Now, Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader, Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader, have both said that that is a far from ideal option. And certain federal agencies have said funding like that over a year-long CR could even impact how they operate. But nonetheless, we're seeing agencies prepare for the possibility that there might be a CR and that Republicans and Democrats don't reach a deal by that key December 16th date.
And on the subject of ticking clocks, Jay, I know that Republicans are going to take control of the House. We're waiting before Democrats lose control of the House for the House committee that's investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol to release its final report. What are we expecting to learn from that?
Well, like you said, they are under the gun to release that final report. Benny Thompson, the chair of the January 6th committee, told our colleague Catherine Faulders that the report will come out before Christmas. When before Christmas is still unclear. It would be a compilation, that report, of everything that we've seen come out of those hearings and more. Remember, there have been thousands of hours of interviews conducted by the committee, and you've only heard certain excerpts of those interviews from Trump allies, from those allegedly involved in January 6th, and everything under that umbrella. So in that report would be everything you saw out of those hearings and everything you didn't see as well. But again, it has to come out before Republicans take control of the House come January, and very likely will have a total reshaping of the January 6th committee, if not getting rid of it entirely. We have heard Republicans say that they want to investigate the committee's investigation when they take power come January.
Well, we want to know who's going to be at the head of all that reshaping, Jay. Is Kevin McCarthy going to have the votes to become Speaker of the House?
Yeah, he needs 218 votes to be the next Speaker of the House. That vote takes place in early January. Republicans, as you know, have a slim majority in the House. He can't afford to lose that many Republicans, and 5 so far have said that they will not vote for McCarthy under any circumstances, and that could be fatal for his bid to become the next Speaker, something Kevin McCarthy has wanted for a long time, practically almost the entirety of his career. So the question becomes, do those 5 lawmakers hold? Do their ranks grow? I can tell you I've been speaking with sources who are closely tied to those 5 lawmakers who are on the further right of the Republican Party, and they seem to believe that they have more than 5, that they have more lawmakers willing to defect and go against McCarthy. But Republican leadership, Steve Scalise, the number 2 Republican in the House, are saying that McCarthy will find those votes come early January. He just told Fox News that he believes those 5 Republicans, some of them might fold in addition to other Republicans falling in line. So it's really one of those big open questions that hangs over the House GOP conference come early January.
And a whole lot can change in 1 month. Jay O'Brien for us on Capitol Hill. Jay, thank you. We want to turn now to the Supreme Court. The justices are hearing a landmark case today that once again involves a clash of gay rights and religious belief. And that issue is whether a Colorado graphic designer can use her faith as a reason for refusing to do business with a gay couple. ABC News senior national correspondent Terry Moran is at the Supreme Court with more. Terry?
This is one of the blockbuster cases of the year here. It pits the rights of free expression, free speech against laws that are designed to protect LGBTQ Americans and other Americans from discrimination. Lori Smith is the plaintiff in this case. She's brought it here. She designs wedding websites in Colorado, but she does not want to design that kind of website for LGBTQ couples because she says it violates her religion. She is asking the Supreme Court to strike down Colorado's Anti-Discrimination Act, which would require her to design wedding websites for gay couples or face fines. She says that law violates her rights to free speech as an artist, as a graphic artist, and she wants the court to strike it down. The state of Colorado says this is very simple. This is a law that requires any business that serves the general public to serve everyone. That's been a cornerstone of civil rights law for decades, but the implications in this case are really big and could go well beyond the LGBTQ community. What if someone wanted what if a photographer who takes pictures of school children didn't want to take a picture of an immigrant school child because he opposes immigration? Or you can imagine a case where a party planner doesn't want to have a birthday party, plan a birthday party for a black child because he doesn't want to celebrate black lives. Those are the kinds of questions that have long been thought settled in civil rights law, but perhaps no more with this case, which we expect a decision in sometime next year. Trevor?
Could be wide-sweeping implications. Terry Moran, thank you. Now we want to turn to inflation and signs that some prices are finally easing. Our chief economic correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, has more on that. Rebecca?
Nowhere is this more apparent than at the gas station, where prices are back below where they were at the start of the war in Ukraine. The national average is $3.40 a gallon today, with Gas Buddy predicting prices will drop below $3 by Christmas. And driving those prices lower is a global slowdown. It's sent demand for gas plunging. Other areas that are also starting to see some first signs of relief: rent, used cars, and chicken. While prices are still higher than average, up 7.7% from a year ago, it appears that they are past the peak when they were up 9.1% earlier this summer. The reasons are that supply chains are finally straightening themselves out, shipping costs are way down, and the Federal Reserve's interest rate increases are pinching the housing market. That's not great news if you want to sell a house, but it is if you're looking to buy. Trevor?
Okay, good to know. Rebecca Jarvis, thank you. Well, fears are growing about a so-called triple-demic, with hospitals across the country filling up with flu, COVID, and RSV patients. The CDC says flu hospitalizations nearly double week over week. So I want to bring in Chief Innovation Officer at Boston Children's Hospital and an ABC News medical contributor, epidemiologist Dr. John Brownstein. Doctor, thank you very much for being here. What do you make of these new warnings from health officials? What should people do if they have the flu, and what just in general people need to know right now?
Well, Trevor, this is really concerning. We are seeing striking flu activity across this country, and this is really unusual and concerning. And this is likely due to a few reasons. One, population immunity. You know, we've been indoors, not gathering for over 2 years, and this ultimately is causing surges because people have not been exposed. So we have reduced immunity. We've also had something called viral interference, meaning that we've had so much COVID that in some ways our immune systems were already being so active that it didn't allow for flu to spread in the community. Also, I think there's something intrinsic likely about this new flu strain. And so while every flu season is different and it's hard to predict how bad it's going to get, we are already at record numbers. So I expect things to get worse before they get better, entering into the holiday season, which is often a super spreader event, unfortunately.
And we also don't want to take our eyes off the ball with COVID, too. I mean, almost half of the U.S. states are seeing higher COVID-19 risk levels, according to the CDC. What does that mean in terms of how COVID is spreading right now? How alarmed should we be?
Well, I'm alarmed about COVID, too. We're seeing this rise in cases, especially post-Thanksgiving, which, again, a lot of people moved around the country, got together, and now we're seeing this rise in COVID cases. We're seeing hospitalization numbers now going because of this BQ 1.1 variant. So we're seeing these both flu and COVID surges happening simultaneously. Makes me really worried for our hospital systems, especially as we enter into this holiday season, which will then again create more opportunities for surge. But we have a reduced amount of immunity in the population. We don't have as much flu shots as we want in our arms. And of course, those boosters for COVID are also problematic.
Is the hospital system prepared for these surges?
We aren't, Trevor. The reality is we're used to an annual flu surge, but beyond that, we're really not structurally developed enough to handle RSV, COVID, flu, parainfluenza, all these other viruses happening simultaneously. We need to think about our health systems going forward. How do we do a better job forecasting risk? How do we do a better job thinking about new technologies like telemedicine or how to bring care at home? We have to think about the data and use it effectively because our health systems really are on the brink, and our physicians, nurses, they're all exhausted after these last 2 years. So what this next few months is going to bring is going to be really concerning. We're already, at capacity. So layering in flu and COVID on top of everything is going to be really challenging for us to handle.
Just no rest for the weary. Dr. John Brownstein, thank you very much for your time. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks, Trevor.
To the war in Ukraine now. Large parts of Ukraine have plunged into darkness amid rolling blackouts following Russian attacks on its energy grid. In fact, at one school in Kyiv, the students and the teachers are continuing to go to class in the dark. Look at that, doing their schoolwork with flashlights. Some true resilience on display there, as we've seen the entire war. But it's also from the Ukrainian capital that Inez de la Cotera joins us now with the latest on the most recent wave of Russian attacks. Inez?
Hey, Trevor. Yeah, and massive new strikes on Ukraine today. We had been expecting that for days. Ukrainian officials had been warning that Russia was gearing up for a fresh new round of attacks. Air raid sirens blaring across the country in every single region except for Russian-occupied Crimea. We're still trying to figure out exactly what happened, but here is what we do know. In Zaporizhia, at least 2 people were killed and 3 injured, including a toddler. We also understand that here in the Kyiv region, Loud explosions were heard, though we believe that was Ukraine's air defense system at work. Russia also once again targeting Ukraine's critical infrastructure. This is Russian President Putin weaponizing winter. So Odessa reporting issues with their water supply, and other regions also reporting issues with their power supply. The entire region of Sumy has been disconnected from the Ukrainian national grid to avoid overstressing the grid. And even the country of Moldova, which borders Ukraine and is connected to Ukraine's power grid, is reporting partial blackouts. There were two different waves of missile strikes today, and Ukrainian officials are warning there could be a third one. They're saying that Russia is now targeting Ukraine in different waves so as to confuse Ukrainian air defenses. Trevor?
Inez de la Quatera from Kyiv. Inez, thank you. And coming up, the latest on the investigation into the University of Idaho killings. The two surviving roommates have now broken their silence. We have more on that when we come back. Welcome back. The two surviving roommates who were in the house at the time of the stabbings of 4 Idaho college students are now speaking out about the unsolved murders. This comes as the father of one of the victims has also revealed new details about the case. Our Kana Whitworth has the latest.
The two surviving roommates in the horrific University of Idaho murders breaking their silence in statements read by a pastor at a memorial service. Bethany and Dylan sharing publicly for the first time how the loss of their roommates has affected them. Bethany saying,
"They all lit up any room they walked into and were gifts to this world. I wish every day that I could give them all one last hug and say how much I loved them."
And Dylan writing,
"I know somewhere Xana and Ethan are together keeping each other company, watching us and telling us it's okay. Maddie and Kaylee were like second moms to me. They changed the way I look at life and how to enjoy life."
Their statements coming as frustration grows over the investigation. Shanna, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee murdered November 13th, more than 3 weeks ago. But still, no suspect has been identified. Kaylee Gonzalez's father confirming to ABC News that Kaylee's wounds were much more severe than her best friend Madison's, after telling Fox News
their means of death don't match. Their points of damage don't match. Sent my daughter to college to get an education. She came back in the box, and I can speak on that.
Steve telling ABC News he learned of the details from her autopsy.
Her death certificate has details on what happened. And there's other things, but at this time, they say it's not the right time.
Gonzalez also saying that Kaylee died in bed next to Madison on the 3rd floor of their home. Shanna and Ethan in the middle floor, and the surviving roommates, Bethany and Dylan, on the ground floor. The morning after the murders, they called friends over to the house, and eventually the 911 call was made from one of their phones.
No call to 911 could have made a difference. So that was comforting to know that it wasn't just a matter of somebody picking up a phone.
Authorities maintain this was a targeted attack and say they've received some 3,000 tips. But now, with more mounting questions, the concern taking a toll not only on the community, but the department as well.
Community is who we are, and we are part of the community. And we don't just say that, we believe it. We try to give back to our community.
And many students not even returning after fall break, and the campus closes down again for the holidays at the end of the month. But, you know, one note here, Trevor, is that Ethan's fraternity started a scholarship in his name, and they have already surpassed their goal of $100,000.
All right, Kana Whitworth, thank you. Well, next, the trial begins today in the case of former police officer Aaron Dean. He's accused of shooting a Tatiana Jefferson in her home in Fort Worth, Texas, back in October of 2019. Well, jury selection was completed on Friday after 3 full days of questioning. The jury will be comprised of 8 men, 6 women, including 2 alternates. I want to bring in New York City homicide public defender and a host at Law and Crime Network and an ABC News contributor, Brian Buckmeyer, for more on this. Brian, what do you expect to see today as the trial begins?
Morning, Trevor. So today we expected to see opening statements, both of the defense and the prosecution, as well as the first witness, actually now 11-year-old Zion Carr, the nephew of a Tatiana Jefferson who was there during the shooting. We know it's going to end early for the funeral of the lead defense attorney who actually passed away a few days earlier.
Let's talk about the jury here, because now that it's settled, we know 8 men and 6 women, but notably, Brian, none of the jurors are black. And this is another instance of a white police officer allegedly killing a black person. Is the makeup of the jury going to have some kind of impact in this case, do you think?
In a case like this, I'm not quite sure. The reason why I say that is because Aaron Dean is not accused of even knowing or seeing the person inside of the home. It would be more about the community or about the reactions afterwards. However, it is somewhat alarming that you get 200 potential jurors come in. And from my understanding, when they whittle it down, it was only about one African-American woman in a group of about 50 or 60 that could even be selected. So that when there's a population of about 17% African-American in this county does seem alarming. It seems more of an issue for the county in selecting jurors, maybe less so for this case.
Does not necessarily seem like a representation of their peers. Brian Buckmeyer, always good to talk to you. Thanks for being here. Coming up, we're going to go, well, we got a couple people coming from Doha to New York City after an incredible run at the World Cup. 2 Team USA stars are here in our studio. Stay with us. Welcome back, and we're talking soccer. The U.S. men's national team put on a very impressive showing in the World Cup, advancing to the round of 16. They were finally knocked out this weekend by the Dutch in a 3-1 loss, but a lot of the United States, in fact, almost all of it, very proud of the performance. And we have 2 of the team's players, Walker Zimmerman and Kellen Acosta, joining us now to talk about the match, the whole World Cup, and what's next for this young team. I know it's a long trip from Qatar to get here to the studio, so we appreciate you being back here. Congratulations on your run. I've heard both of you talk about how it's a dream come true just to play in the World Cup. How did the reality live up to the dream?
Man, I would say it exceeded it in every way possible. I think feeling the support from back home, from our fans, and then ultimately the team experience and the selflessness that we got to see from the guys who played, the guys who didn't play. Truly the best team culture that I've been a part of.
Mm-hmm. Did you say the same thing, Kellen?
Yeah.
I've heard you say you were dreaming about it since you were 5.
Yeah, since I was 5. I mean, just kind of just to piggyback off of Walker. I mean, it's kind of just a surreal feeling. I mean, when we were there in Qatar, it's one of those times where, I'm laying down in my bed and just kind of thinking about it. Like, this is something that I've dreamed of for my whole life, and to finally to achieve it is just something truly special.
Sure. You guys are both professional athletes, so it's not new to be playing in front of crowds, but it's different to have your whole country cheering for you. What's that difference in feeling when you're playing?
I think there's a greater sense of responsibility, probably a little bit more pressure, but also at the same time a lot more joy, because you know that you're representing something so much bigger than yourself. You know that a lot's on the line, and when the games matter, that's when you really start having fun out there. So again, amazing experience. The bigger games, the more fun it can be.
Mm-hmm. Any surprises from Qatar or just playing on the world stage?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, just Qatar as a country, it was a beautiful country. It was an amazing experience, just from all the staff. Everyone was super accommodating. Our hotel was amazing. I can't commend it enough. I mean, it was just a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
What were the nerves like for that first match?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty nerve-wracking. I mean, it's the World Cup, right?
Right.
It's the biggest game of our careers, and first stepping on the field, I mean, it was just going to be a tough game. We played against a tough Wales opponent, but it was one of those things, right? When you got onto the field, it just became to relax and kind of chilled out a little bit. But it was definitely a dream come true.
Right. Still the same sport you've been playing your whole life once you're out there, but still, man, the butterflies, I can hardly imagine. Obviously, everyone was talking about what a young team you guys were, second youngest team in the tournament. What are the hopes for Team USA going forward?
I think there's so much to be excited about with this team, this group of players. We have a lot of young talent that is playing at a very high level across the world in club football, and so we have our hopes, really high. I think fans can expect a lot from this team moving forward, and we certainly are optimistic about the chance to represent our country again on home soil as we host the 2026 World Cup.
Did either of you have guys that you're used to competing against that you became teammates with and suddenly you're buddies with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we played against, everyone. I mean, me and Walker played on the same team, and obviously in training, we're back on the same team and all that, and me and Tyler Adams, we used to go battle to battle, then just respectively, I mean, playing against Wales, against my teammate Gareth Bale as well, and I ended up kicking him at the end of the game. So it was a friendly battle, but I mean, like I said, just enjoyable experience.
Of course, it was really enjoyable watching you guys. I know the whole country is really proud. We appreciate you making time for us, and we hope you can get some rest too.
Yes, much needed.
Long trip back for sure. We'll get you some lunch after this too. Kellen Acosta, Walker Zimmerman, really appreciate your time and really appreciate the entirety of Team USA in the World Cup. I'm Trevor Ault. Stay with us as ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.